What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing a very similar team to what I showcased in yesterday's video. However, instead of the Shadow Talonflame, I'm running Shadow Arcanine on Thunderfang, and actually it plays quite differently to yesterday's video, as Arcanine is used as the safe swap, and it would actually often bait out something like a Jellicent or a Mantine, which clearly was just not expecting Arcanine to have an electric type fast move. Now, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I don't like to run similar teams too frequently, so please let me know if this video feels quite repetitive if you watch yesterday's video, or if maybe you still enjoyed it despite having watched that video. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What's the most unexpected coverage fast move either you've used or come across someone else using in the Go Battle League? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Hisuian Samurott into a mirror lead. So I'm actually going to swap out of this matchup into Thunderfang, Arcanine, and the opponent, what are you doing? They swap into their Mantine. This is an awful matchup for them because I can shield once, fully Thunderfang farm them down, come out with so much energy. Of course, I've got Psychic Fangs and Wild Charge here, so if they come back in with the Samurott, I'll go for the Wild Charge, but they actually come in with a Credilli. Now, we're going to go straight for a Psychic Fangs here, then I'm actually going to swap out into my Samurott, as I can force a CMP tie here, and I've just debuffed their defense, so Sacred Sword is going to do quite a lot of damage, and as a result, it ends up grabbing a shield. At this point, I'm going to no shield. They actually go for a Rock Tomb, which is kind of a smart play there, because, well, it should have forced the opponent to come in and then go for a full farm down, but they don't want to be hit by another Sacred Sword, and potentially we might have got there, but now we can just come back in with the Arcanine. I'm going straight for Wild Charge here. All shields are down, so Wild Charge gets the knockout. We can now swap back into our Typhlosion. Unfortunately, they will be outpacing me here to a Rock Tomb. However, it just does not matter at this point. We shield the Rock Tomb, we can go for a Shadow Ball, and the opponent actually just going to concede the match. So, GG's when they're into the next battle. We see Poliwrath in the leads. Of course, not a great matchup for me. Gonna be swapping out, and the opponent comes in with a Jellicent, and this is absolutely fine for me, because we can go straight for a Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs, gonna be shielded by the Jellicent, and now the opponent will throw some energy. However, because we do have an energy advantage, I can shield the Surf, I can outpace them to the next charge move. Unfortunately, because we are on the new game code, it doesn't look like I would be able to Thunderfang farm them down, but a second Psychic Fangs is going to get the knockout. Once again, they're now going to come in with Credilli, and at this point, honestly, I don't mind not throwing at all, just to force the opponent to expend their energy immediately, because now we can come in with the Samurott. If they swap back into Poliwrath, we can come in with our Hisuian Typhlosion, and I'm going straight for the Wild Charge. Of course, Wild Charge is going to debuff my defense, but they're doing no fast move pressure whatsoever with counter as the fast move, and they're going to full send a Scald, which means now I can look to overfarm quite considerably, fire off yet another Wild Charge. Of course, this is super effective damage. Wild Charge gets the knockout there. They come back in with the Credilli, and they should be able to live a Shadow Ball from this range. However, they're in a really awkward situation because the opponent has to basically farm up to back-to-back charge moves, but they are so low, so I actually swap into my Samurott here, and I wasn't intentionally doing this, but I'm able to catch a Rock Tomb, go for one Fury Cutter, get the fast move farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's when they're into the next battle. We can see Abomasnow in the lead, and again, our safe swap baits out the Jellicent, which is absolutely perfect for me. This time around, they are going to throw first, but we can shield the Surf. I can now go for a Psychic Fangs. If they no-shield this, I should be able to Thunderfang farm them down, and so the opponent is going to no-shield, but now we've got switch advantage. Plus, they can't really come back in with the Abomasnow either, so let's see what their final Pokemon is, and the opponent going to come in with a Mantine. No trainer, that is definitely not the play. I just said that they can't come back in with the Abomasnow, but that is definitely a better option than coming in with a Mantine, which of course is not in the best position here. We go for Psychic Fangs. We're able to grab a shield back from the opponent. I'm going to come in with a Samurott, and at this point, I'm just going to wait for the opponent to throw some energy. Of course, we can tank a Twister pretty comfortably here. The opponent is likely going to swap back into the Abomasnow, and so we come in with the Typhlosion, and this should be game over. Now, you could argue maybe I should have thrown a Sacred Sword first. That would have put them into perfect Ember farm down range. However, I'm still fine shielding one of these moves. I can farm up to back-to-back Wild Charges. I did, of course, bank a Dark Pulse onto my Samurott. So here, unfortunately, not quite able to go for a full farm down, but Wild Charge gets the knockout. They come back in with the Mantine, and we've got a second Wild Charge loaded. Of course, this is going to grab the final shield, but now we can just come in, snipe with a Dark Pulse from the Hisuian Samurott, and Dark Pulse gets the knockout, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's over there into the next battle. We see Mantine in the lead this time around. We're going to be safe swapping into Arcanine. And because they're staying in, I'm happy to tank a Twister here. Twister is going to do decent damage. And now they're going to come in with a Shadow Kingdra. Now, honestly, they probably always shield in this matchup. So, I should have baited with a Psychic Fangs. However, Wild Charge is going to guarantee a shield or huge damage. So, there, of course, could have baited. This would make the matchup with Samurott a little bit more comfortable because now I'm going to shield this. And if they do end up baiting with a Swift, which they do, then unfortunately, I don't think a Sacred Sword quite gets the knockout from this range. Sacred Sword, as we're going to see, just barely doesn't get the KO there. So if I baited with the Psychic Fangs, I'd be in a much better position. But I'm actually going to swap out of that matchup. I was trying to go for an Ember Farm down, which of course would have been double resisted, which would have gained me so much energy. But the opponent actually swaps out into Mantine at the exact same time. Now I go straight for the Wild Charge there, hoping maybe the opponent would no shield, expecting like a Fire Punch bait or something. But unfortunately, because I do that, I debuff myself immediately. Wild Charge, number 2, gonna get the knockout, but they're now gonna come in with a Lowland Sand Slash, which of course is dealing big damage with those Shadow Claws. I have to swap out, clear the debuff, and the opponent is eventually gonna swap back into Kingdra, and that allows me to get the full farm down. But are they in Shadow Ball range here? Of course, Fire Punch easily gets the KO. Shadow Ball doesn't quite get the knockout though, and unfortunately, Hisuian Typhlosion, the Fire-type Pokemon, ends up losing to the Lowland Sand Slash. But either way, GG's to our trainer into the next battle, and Carbink is a huge problem for this team. However, seeing it in the lead, at least we know it's here. Of course, if they save it for the backline, then unfortunately there's just not much I can do whatsoever. Whereas here, we can chip with a couple of Sacred Swords. I'm actually now going to swap out into my Shadow Arcanine, as I should be able to outpace them before the opponent reaches back-to-back Rock Sides. So at this point, I'm going to go for a Psychic Fangs. I tried to hold on CMP, but the opponent going to catch it onto a Kanto Ninetales. But honestly, that's not too bad for me because I can reach another Psychic Fangs, and I'm actually able to win CMP. So Psychic Fangs, number 2, actually going to be shielded by the opponent. That is absolutely fine with me. At this point, I'm going to no shield. Weather Ball will get the knockout from that range. We can now come in with our Typhlosion, and I will resist everything they can throw here. Of course, Weather Ball is still going to do like decent damage there. They're going to swap back into Carbink, and of course, they did bank a charge move before swapping out. So I'm going to shield the Rock Side. I'm now going to bank a ton of energy, and they come in with the Samurott and go straight for Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword is going to be enough damage to get the knockout from this range. So let's see what the opponent wants to do. They come back in with the Ninetales, but I'm able to force another CMP tie, and from this range, Sacred Sword is going to be enough damage to take out the Ninetales, and their final Pokemon is a Ludicolo. Now at this point, unfortunately, only going to reach another Sacred Sword here, but the opponent has an important decision. They need to throw straight away, because if they opt for the extra fast move, we can come in with Typhlosion. We were one away from back-to-back Wild Charges. First one grabs the final shield, and the second one wins CMP in this matchup, taking out the Ludicolo. And I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. See Shadow Alone Sand Slash in the lead. So, we're going to stay in this matchup as it's a pretty good matchup for me. Resisting the Shadow Claw damage if they're on Powder Snow as well. That's also absolutely fine. And of course, Sacred Sword is double super effective. Now, that is a CMP tie somehow. I'm not really sure because I should outpace them by a single turn. But we end up swapping at the same time as the opponent. As the opponent comes in with a Jellicent. And now we come in with our Arcanine. Now, unfortunately, because they do swap out at the same time, they will actually outpace me to back-to-back charge moves. So, if they shield here, unfortunately, I don't know if I want to end up double shielding, so I might just let this move go through and then come back in with my Samurott. Unfortunately, Typhlosion is going to struggle to get the fast move farm down here, and Hexes are going to add up quite a lot. So honestly, not actually in the best position there, especially since they come in with their final Pokemon, which is a Lantern. So of course, I'm going to have to shield this. Surf is basically going to one-shot me from this range, so we're now going to look to overfarm. Of course, we have to go for 2 charge moves, so I think I might as well go for Wild Charges instead of full sending a Shadow Ball, and actually, I think here, yeah, we might as well go for a second Wild Charge. Of course, I'm going to quad debuff my defense by this point. They come back in with the Sand Slash, and the opponent is going to make a really nice catch here. However, I go for the undercharge. Nice. Doesn't do much damage. We commit to the Fury Cutter farm down, and we actually get the perfect farm down, coming out with a Sacred Sword loaded. That could not have worked out better for me, because Sacred Sword gets the one shot, as of course it's double super effective, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I see another Shadow Alone Sand Slash in the lead. This time, I do end up over-farming here, but still, we're able to go for a Sacred Sword here. The opponent does not make a catch or anything, and they're going to fire off a charge move of their own. I'm happy to no shield here because Drill Run obviously going to do more damage into my backline. They're going to swap out into Lantern, and I make a pretty big mistake here. I should have swapped out into my Arcanine. Of course, we've got neutral damage with the Thunder Fangs, with the Wild Charges, potentially Psychic Fangs as well if I wanted to bait. Whereas here, we already know a Shadow Ball is not going to KO. So I need 2 moves to get the knockout. And this time around, I didn't want to debuff myself so early. So go for Shadow Ball first. This time, we go for the Wild Charge. We do get the knockout. But they're now going to come back in with the Shadow Sand Slash. And they're actually able to go for a crazy Shadow Claw farm down because I debuffed my defense. So that is obviously not ideal for me in the slightest. I come in with the Arcanine. I'm able to swap out catch the charge move. However, I didn't necessarily want that because I've got a Sacred Sword loaded. But the opponent now comes in with a Jellicent, so I'm going straight for Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is going to be no shielded, which is quite nice for me. And the opponent not quite able to farm down before I reach a last second Sacred Sword. And at this point, the opponent, they go for the charge move. Oh no, they must have thought they KO'd there. But no, we're on 1 HP, so we still have a slither of hope here. But I need to outpace the Alolan Sand Slash. And unfortunately, they had back-to-back charge moves. We were, I think, 1 or 2 away from a Psychic Fangs there. So we, once again, despite the fact that my team is pretty good into Alolan Sand Slash, we end up going down there with the Fire type, which is not ideal. But either way, GG to our trainer into the next battle. You can see Mantine in the lead. This time around, we're able to bait out a Lantern, which is honestly where we want to see it for this team. This team is quite soft to Lantern, whereas now, actually, because we do have an energy advantage, I can just go for back-to-back Wild Charges here. And even though I am going to debuff my defense, I'm not entirely sure that the opponent would be able to Spark Farm me down before I reach another move. So the opponent actually goes for CMP, which of course they end up losing into the Arcanine, and honestly, that's not so bad for me. I'm now going to come in with the Typhlosion. The opponent is going to eventually swap back into Mantine, but I'm able to react. I go straight for Wild Charge here. Wild Charge, double super effective, easily gets the one shot. They're going to come back in with the Lantern. I did try to make a catch there, but I was a little bit too slow. Well, the opponent just threw not quite when I was expecting it. Either way, I'm going to bank a ton of energy, and I'm actually able to reach a Sacred Sword as the opponent gets to a Thunderbolt. That is huge for me because that gets the knockout. Their final Pokemon is Araquanid, which could be a little bit problematic for me, but I'm able to reach a Dark Pulse, and this is just going to guarantee that a Wild Charge gets the KO. Dark Pulse already does about 50% of their HP. Wild Charge is super effective damage, so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's will run there into the next battle. You can see another Alolan Sand Slash in the lead. So once again, we're just going to stay in this matchup, and once again going straight for Sacred Sword. This time around, it's not some weird CMP tie where it shouldn't be, so that is all good. I'm going to no-shield once again. However, the opponent is running a non-shadow, so that's not as threatening. Now here, we swap out into our Arcanine. We do bait out a Water-type Pokemon, however, not the one we're expecting to see or hoping to see really, as they come in with a Shadow Kingdra, which is only taking neutral damage from the Thunder Fangs, from the Wild Charges, but again, we're able to grab that final shield with the Wild Charge, so potentially could have baited there, but honestly, I feel like that's quite risky. At this point, we can come in, we're actually able to win CMP with a Sacred Sword, and from this range, Sacred Sword will get the knockout. That is huge for me. They come back in with the Sand Slash. I'm going to swap out into my Typhlosion. Obviously, not really looking to catch a charge move there. The opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Ludicolo, which not the best for me. However, we can go for a Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to do big damage, and the opponent, if they want to throw a charge move, well, then we just come in with a Samrock, farm them down, come out with a Sacred Sword. So the opponent opts not to throw any energy whatsoever. We get to a last second Wild Charge, but now we can still outpace them there as the opponent needs back-to-back charge moves. And of course, Sacred Sword is double super effective. We've seen this many times. It takes out the Alolan Sand Slash, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up into the next battle. We see Poliwrath in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for me. And even worse, the opponent's now going to come in with a Carbink. I don't think I'm going to reach a Psychic Fangs and a Wild Charge, but I think maybe I can get to 2 Psychic Fangs before they fully farm me down, and I'm just barely able to do so. Now, potentially, if I went just straight for a Wild Charge instead, that would have done slightly more damage in general, but of course, now I've debuffed them. I don't think that really makes a huge difference, though. Fury Cutters probably still don't do much damage whatsoever, but the opponent's actually going to swap out, but they've got another Core Breaker in the form of Lantern. So honestly, this is not looking good for me whatsoever, but we're going to go for a Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is going to be shielded. And you know what? I kind of have to just no-shield here. The opponent is going to full send a Thunderbolt. Not ideal for me. However, those Fury Cutters maybe put them into range where Shadow Ball will come close to getting the knockout, and potentially I could put them into range where I can Ember Farm them down. But the opponent not going to allow for that to happen, instead swapping back into the Carbink, which makes a lot of sense. We go for Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball gets the KO there. The opponent, they're going to come back in with the Poliwrath, but they throw extremely early, and this is just going to be a power-up punch, which does hardly any damage whatsoever. However, I'm at 100 energy. I overfarm as much as possible before throwing a Wild Charge, which of course is going to debuff me. But even then, with that debuff, despite the fact that counter is double resisted, it's still adding up too much to the point where, unfortunately, I'm not going to reach a Shadow Ball. And actually, Shadow Ball probably doesn't quite KO the Lantern from that range anyways. But either way, I lose that game. But GG Star Trainer into the next battle, another Poliwrath in the lead. So again, not ideal for me. And again, they are going to be on Power Up Punch. So I'm just going to no-shield the first move as I can tank this. I expect the opponent to swap out there, so I don't go straight for the Psychic Fangs. And the opponent comes in with a Ludicolo. I'm going for the Wild Charge. Wild Charge, again, is shielded. So potentially I could have baited there. There are quite a few opportunities where I could have grabbed the shield with the Psychic Fangs and put myself in a slightly better position. But either way, we're going to come in. We shield the first charge move. I'm just going to play this super safe here. I'm going for the Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse will guarantee the knockout. I'm then going to swap out straight away into my Typhlosion. And the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Jellicent. Now, we do look to overfarm here, but the opponent is also overfarming. We go for Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to be shielded. And unfortunately, they can just barely outpace me before I reach another Shadow Ball. I don't think Wild Charge quite gets the knockout. However, I'm in a great position here. Now, despite the fact that everything they can throw is resisted, I might as well just shield a Shadow Ball because Poliwrath is not going to be reaching any charge moves. So now we are extremely healthy here. And actually, even if they did manage to reach a last second Power Up Punch, it's not going to do too much damage, but it doesn't matter. They don't get there in time. Sacred Sword, neutral damage, but it takes out the Poliwrath from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Golisopod in the lead. We are going to be swapping out into Arcanine, and unfortunately met with a Kingdra, but they are going straight for a Swift, which I'm able to tank. And again, could have gone for a Psychic Fangs here, guaranteed a shield because they're always going to shield to maintain alignment, but we go for Wild Charge, and that still grabs the shield, but of course we don't drop their defense. But because this is a non-shadow, maybe a little bit less threatening here as well, the opponent is not going to go for the Outrage, instead just settling for a Swift, so here I might as well go straight for the Sacred Sword. Of course, Sacred Sword is going to get the KO from that range. I'm going to be swapping out straight away, but they've got a Shadow Reshiram in the back, and they're actually on Shadow Claw on the Golisopod. If they had Fury Cutter, honestly, I'd be in a great position, but we full send the Shadow Ball, we get the knockout, but they're just going to deal too much damage here with the Dragon Breaths, and I don't know if Samurott can reach a Dark Pulse before they fully Dragon Breath farm it down. So we go for Shadow Ball there. Of course, the opponent, well, we still got two shields, but they don't need to throw a charge move, and unfortunately, just barely missing out by a single turn. You can see we get the energy as they farm me down, and I end up losing that game. But GG's to that trainer. Also, quite nice spice there with the Shadow Reshiram in the back. But either way, into the next battle, honestly, I don't have a clue what they led with because I was talking about the previous game, but they say swap into Empoleon. So at this point, I'm going to no-shield this. I'm going to overfarm just a tiny bit more here, banking close to a Sacred Sword, and then sniping with my Shadow Arcanine. They probably led with the Ludicolo there as they come back in with it. This time around, I am going for a Psychic Fangs, and Psychic Fangs is going to be shielded. So pretty much every time I throw a charge move with Arcanine, it does grab a shield. So honestly, I mean, it's a bit late now for you to copy this team anyways, because you've got like 3 hours before the leagues rotate. But if you did want to use this team, you can probably get away with just going straight Psychic Fangs in a lot of matchups. Either way, I'm going to go for a Sacred Sword here because I've debuffed them. Sacred Sword doesn't quite get the knockout, but it puts them into perfect farm down range. Their final Pokemon is Arcanine, and we have a very strong answer here. Of course, Bubble Beams are going to hit for super effective damage. They're also going to drop my attack stat, but it doesn't really matter. We've got a 2-to-1 shield advantage. I can live a Bubble Beam here, and of course, Bug Bites are going to be double resisted, but they are kind of adding up over the time, even though they are double resisted, so we might as well shield there. We can go for Wild Charge. Wild Charge, gonna deal big damage. They can reach another Bubble Beam, but honestly, it does not make a difference here. We can just shield that up there. We can go straight for Wild Charge number 3, and Wild Charge will get the knockout. So the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I see a Sea King in the lead. So, this is going to be a fairly neutral matchup here. I'm going to no-shield the first move as they are going to go straight for Draw Run. I then just bank the energy. I come in with my Arcanine, but they're going to come in with a Bastiodon, and that is certainly not ideal for me. However, it looks like I will just barely reach back-to-back Wild Charges, which is honestly going to deal some pretty decent damage here and get them fairly low. So, Wild Charge number 2 coming through. Wild Charge is going to get them into range where, well, unfortunately, I can't quite farm them down with either Pokemon, so I'm actually just going to come in. We did bank a Sacred Sword. I'm just going to waste their energy here. We can go for the Sacred Sword. If they want to shield this, then fair play, but Sacred Sword is going to get the KO there, and they come in with a Bomb of Snow, so we do have some play here, but of course they have quite a lot of energy on the Seaking, and honestly, maybe a little bit more energy than I remember, because unfortunately, I overfarm way too much here. I still can't quite commit to a full Ember farm down, so I'm going to be forced to throw some energy at the last second, but at this point, they've still got 2 shields here. They realize they can actually just save their shields for the Bomb of Snow, and whilst I am a Fire-type Pokemon, I'm just not going to deal enough pressure with the Embers. We can go for a Wild Charge. We do swap out, and we are actually able to reach a last-second Sacred Sword, but honestly, it just doesn't matter at this point, as of course, they can use their final shield. They've got likely back-to-back charge moves already. They're going to fire off the first one, and actually, Weather Ball gets the KO from that range anyways. They didn't need a second move, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's upon there into the next battle, another Poliwrath in the lead. We safe swap into our Arcanine, and this time around, we've learned our lesson. We're going straight for Psychic Fangs, and again, we are going to grab the shield. We also still force the opponent to throw energy anyways, so honestly, not that bad from the Arcanine. They're actually on Surf as well, so wasting a tiny bit more energy than if they went for a Swift, of course. I don't know if that means they're not running Swift or not, but either way, we're going to come in with a Samurott. I'm not going to mess around and find out. I'm going straight for Sacred Sword, and I'm able to get the knockout. I'm going to be swapping out into Typhlosion immediately, and their final Pokemon is a Shadow Credilli on Bullet Seed. And honestly, this is much better to see than the regular version, as a Shadow Ball does huge damage. And actually, if they go for the debuff here, they're going to put themselves into perfect Ember farm down range. We're going for 6 full Embers to get the farm down there, and we come out with very close to back-to-back Wild Charges already. And since this is a Shadow Poliwrath, honestly, I don't think I need to swap out and clear the debuff. We can just stay in. We can go straight for Wild Charge number 2. Wild Charge gets the knockout anyways, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the final battle of this video, leading into a Talonflame, which honestly not that comfortable for the Samurott because, of course, Fury Cutters are double resisted, but we swap out into Arcanine, and the opponent comes in with a Charm Primarina, and this is an amazing matchup for me as we go for the full farm down, and now they're going to come in with a Bullet Seed Credilli. So again, we can go straight for the Psychic Fangs here. Of course, Wild Charge is resisted anyway, so we definitely would not go for the Wild Charge here, and I'm actually going to shield this because I realize Arcanine still has a lot of play into the Talonflame, so I'm going to be swapping out into my Samurott, and I'm able to go for a Sacred Sword here. So Sacred Sword, probably going to grab a shield as the opponent likely going to shield and then go for a charge move. I'm happy to just let this move go through at this point. The opponent is going to full send a Grass Knot, but that's absolutely fine with me. I'm now going to come in with my Typhlosion, and of course I am resisting the Bullet Seed damage. Here I go for a Wild Charge because they're in range, but also if they try and make a catch, we use less energy anyways. And here, I'm actually going to use a shield. This might seem like a bit of a strange play, but I'm now going to swap back into my Arcanine. The opponent is going to be forced to throw their charge move straight away. Otherwise, they're going to be Thunderfang farm down, which means now we can come in with our Typhlosion. We will always outpace them to a charge move, and also that Credilli is completely energy dry. So here, I'm not going to mess around. We should very comfortably win CMP, but taking no risk at all. Wild Charge gets the knockout, and then here, I can actually just Ember farm them all the way down, and so I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.